Warning. Warning. Warning.
Okay, brothers and sisters and misses and misters, here's your daddy-o with the sounds to go. No shucking, no jiving, I'm telling you, your music's arriving.
Hey everybody, I'm Largo. Welcome to the Lair and another episode of The Lounge. International this time, as we have a guest from the Emerald Isle who will be joining us. But first, my good time buddy, Will. Hey Will.
Hey, how's it going?
It's getting there, man. Busy week, but I'm glad you were able to join us today. I know it's a little early for you. Looking forward to this. I don't get a chance to talk with our friend BobaHicks that often because different time zones and all that. So it'll be neat to catch up.
He's a magical man. I could listen to him talk toys all day and all night.
Indeed. So let's introduce our guest. That's the wrong button. Let's try this one. Hey, there he is.
Hello.
Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us today. It's getting there.
Thank you
I
for
don't
having
have.
me.
Yeah, it's always fun to hang with you. I don't have any Irish ale, but to celebrate, I am bringing our traditional Guatemalan gallo to the table.
Very nice.
Very nice.
If there's no cock on the label, it's probably not good beer. But looking forward to this. As I said, first of all, let's ask about the Starscream icon and the name BobaHicks. Where does that come from?
Right. So the Starscream icon, there's really no explanation other than it was an icon I've had sitting on my YouTube account since probably I've had this YouTube account. It's been there forever.
Okay.
The name BobaHicks, and also the reason it's Starscream is because Starscream is my favorite Decepticon. I'm a big fan of Starscream. But the name BobaHicks is essentially an amalgamation of Boba Fett and Corporal Dwayne Hicks. So Boba Fett from The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars, Corporal Dwayne Hicks from Aliens, two of my favorite film series and two of my favorite characters from each series. So I just popped the names together, BobaHicks. Early foray into all types of, when you're on the internet for the first time, it's like, I need a name, I need something, a username, and it stuck. I've had it for a long time, and there you go.
Cool. And that's a great picture of Starscream. It encapsulates him perfectly. That's I don't know if that's the scene, but I just keep hearing him saying, "Wanna bet?" Because Megatron's saying, "I still function. Wanna bet?" He just shoots him in the face. It's great.
Indeed.
He's such a great character.
Well, we are here today with our buddy to talk about aliens. Okay, wait, not those aliens. These aliens. So, Boba is a big fan, as he just mentioned, of the Alien franchise as well as the Predators, as I think all of us are from one aspect or another. Such a cultural icon for not only great film, but also some of the graphic novels, audiobooks, toys. It's all over the place. So we'll just kind of go through the basics here of for those who came in late as to speak. Most of you guys already know this, but humor me. Alien is a science fiction horror and action media franchise centered on the film series, which depicts warrant officer Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, and her battles with an extraterrestrial life form, commonly referred to as the alien or xenomorph. Ripley is often considered one of the most significant female protagonists in cinematic history and is a prominent figure in popular culture. Gentlemen, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, they
Darcy
definitely
would.
ran with her. I mean, she became, to the point where, was it by Alien 3 or Aliens 3, they were cloning her and she wasn't even the original Ripley, or she became like this kind of iconic character. But the first movie, and like the first time I saw it, I was probably very small. I do remember, just it was not really. I didn't realize that she was the most badass person on that ship. But and
Well, and
thinking
in the
back,
original film, she didn't realize that either. She was just a
mhm,
flight officer. She wasn't a particular warrior. It was just the circumstance. And I liked the way that they created a character who was not instant hero. She wasn't a Mary Sue, as they say today. She didn't have super abilities. She was just a person in a really horrible situation who had to do the best she could. And
Yes.
it was well done. And you had a lot of testosterone fueled 80s heroes, and then here comes this unassuming gal who just kicks some ass, and it was like, I like it.
Yeah, and it's not really set up like that either, because when you're watching the film for the first time, like you said, there's a lot of testosterone floating around in that ship, and even in the credits, I think she might be maybe second or third. She's definitely not top billing. I think it might be Tom Skerritt who gets top billing. So, when you're watching the film for the first time, like you said, she doesn't start off being a badass. You kind of follow her on this journey as the situation's getting progressively worse. With the more the situation kind of descends into chaos, the kind of tougher she gets and the more capable she gets. And yeah, brilliant character and a brilliant setup for the character.
Yeah, and she really did a great job. I don't know that the character would have been as iconic if it wasn't for Sigourney Weaver and her portrayal.
oh, agreed.
So, enough of the humies. Let's talk about the critters. So the alien itself, also known as Xenomorph XX121 by the company, we'll talk about in a minute, is a fictional extraterrestrial species that serves as the title antagonist of the Alien film series. The species made its debut in the film Alien in 1979, reappeared in the sequels Aliens in 86 and Alien 3 in 92, once again in Alien Resurrection in 97. And that's it for the original Xenomorph. Everything after that has been kind of proto or, other offshoots. So I didn't include those. We're just going with the OG. And what a horrific look. Very different from any other aliens we'd seen in cinema up to that time. Either it was a low, B movie budget gelatinous mass or tentacles, or it was a goofy guy in a rubber suit. This was something completely different. What did you guys think when you initially saw the alien?
Oh,
I was
terrified.
freaked out completely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
completely freaked out. And especially because when you saw the alien, you actually didn't see the alien because a lot of the time you could barely see it. You knew it was there, but yeah, you might just see the teeth or, the hands descending when someone's about to, meet their fate. But the glimpses you would catch of it, especially in that first film, you knew it was something terrifying.
I agree. The way that they did the cinematography of, kind of borrowing from Jaws and other monster films where it's like less is more. Don't show too much and it'll actually be scarier. It really worked.
I mean,
And
I
all
think
the
even the face
Go ahead.
hugger was scary for me. I don't want to, derail you there, but
Oh
that thing
no.
freaked me out when I first saw that. And oof,
Oh yeah.
and when
And
they try
there
to
have been
cut it
all
off and
kinds
the
of
acid blood goes through that
Oh
just
yeah.
freaked me
And
out. Yeah.
yeah, there have been a lot of psychological treaties and papers written on, all of the body horror and, even some of the sexual innuendo of the face hugger and why it's very violating. It's very horrific in its design on purpose. That was part of what they were going for was, the idea of being violated by a parasite and
Mhm.
cringy, but it
Hey, we
worked.
got Kieran Ball here. Hi, Kieran. How are you? It's good to see you, buddy. He says, of course, in the original script, Ripley was written as a male character, and even when they cast Sigourney, they didn't bother to change the script. And yeah, that sounds
That's true. I had
exactly
forgotten
what
about
happened.
that. The character of Ripley was very different in the original script, and it evolved into what we have now, which I think is probably for the best. Um, and
There's
one of the
probably some
reasons,
alternate universe where they went with Alan Ripley and the franchise
oh yeah,
failed out of the gate.
I wouldn't doubt it. One of the reasons this is such a horrific character is because of the original design. And this came from a lithograph done by the Swiss surrealist H.R. Geiger. And uh, Necronom Gesundheit. I don't know how to say it.
Necronomicon?
Well, yeah, I almost said that. It's like Necronom 4 was the name of the lithograph. It was part of a series of horror images that he had done. And when they were creating the design, someone had seen that and said, that's what we want. We want something like that. So they went to Geiger and said, we want to use this imagery and create our alien based on that. And wow, the biomechanical aspects were, like we said, it's novel. It wasn't done before, and very terrifying. More terrifying would be having to live in that suit for several months while you're filming. And the poor guy who got that job was this fella here. Deciding that the creature would be scarier the closer it appeared to human, director Ridley Scott decided that a single, very tall, very thin man be used. The casting director found this 6'10" or 2.08 meters for you Europeans, rail thin graphic designer Bol- Bolangi uh, Badejo. Hopefully, I didn't butcher the name. Found him in a local pub. He went to some Tai Chi classes and mime classes to learn how to slow down his movements to get that creepy
Oh,
movement for the alien. And this is his only acting credit. He wasn't an actor. He wasn't a performer. He was just a guy on the street. And they said, "You're really tall and thin. You'll fit in the suit." And there it is. So, did you know that, Boba?
I didn't know that they'd actually met him in a pub. That's, what a kind of turn of circumstance for that guy, especially knowing that he never went on to act in any other roles. But, you know, what he did get, I think we were kind of speaking briefly before we went on air, that, you would feel sorry for this guy being in that suit, especially
Oh,
since you know that they haven't used a lot of the footage they actually did shoot of him, scurrying around in the dark and climbing and doing all. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of the footage looks awful. It's not very good, but still, I feel for this man suffering as he had to no doubt spend hours upon hours on a hot set wearing that
oh,
suit with the massive head and everything and doing
oh
all that
yeah.
stuff. What a
for
man,
sure.
a legend of a man.
Hey, I can
And,
remember just complaining having to wear my mask on Halloween, and going a couple blocks without taking it off in a breather. I can imagine what this was like.
yeah, and this was not the original suit. When they were first coming up with the concept, they had designed a suit that actually had two people in it. Kind of like a pantomime horse, where you've got two different people running the legs. They tried that; it just didn't. It looked funky, They tried a couple other designs. So there was all kinds of test footage and things that have been probably lost to the cutting room floor. But, long before they decided on the single actor and the thin, tall, terrifying look, they burned through a lot of cash doing some R&D trying to figure this thing out, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, Pericles here saying he doesn't blame him. If that was my first acting job in a hot, heavy suit, I'd probably stay away from future gigs too.
Agreed.
Definitely.
Because the head, which obviously he doesn't have on in this photo, was animatronic. It had a lot of moving parts and mechanisms to make the mouth work. It had to be really heavy and hot. So kudos to this guy for being a trooper and making that work. So as iconic as the original Aliens film was, for a lot of us, myself included, Aliens, the sequel, was probably the superior film for a lot of reasons. I'm very partial to the Colonial Marines. Cool concept. There were a few things I wish they had refined with it, but overall, I think it really worked. Aliens, plural, was released in July 18th of 1986 to critical acclaim, which is unusual. Sci-fi movies critics usually don't like. Reviewers praised its action, but some criticized the intensity of some scenes. Aliens is now considered among the greatest films of the 1980s and among the best science fiction, action, and sequel films ever made, arguably equal to or better than Alien. It is credited with expanding the franchise's scope with additions to the series' backstory and factions such as the Colonial Marines. So, thoughts on that?
Yeah, can't argue with any of that. It really, really, really expanded the lore, and you want to talk about a sequel that just goes bigger and badder, and arguably better. And I have no problem with anybody saying that Alien is better than Aliens or vice versa. They're both fantastic films, and they feed off each other in many ways. But yeah, with Aliens, just that whole concept of the story of what it was, and you mentioned the Colonial Marines. There was just that whole military aspect that was completely removed from the first movie, which was more of like a horror thriller. Now all of a sudden we're like in an action, war zone situation. You got these group of literal badasses with awesome weapons. I mean, like the pulse rifle has to be one of the most iconic movie weapons of all time. Like it's it's unbelievable. I'd probably only say maybe the lightsaber beats it, but that would be the only weapon that would beat it for me as far as movie weapons go. But yeah, as a sequel, like it's just amazing. It's just amazing, and it doesn't for want of a better term, like it doesn't dump all over the first film either. Sometimes when you get a sequel, it kind of makes the events of the first film seem less important, or just they might ignore stuff or anything. Like it really, really went back. It looked at the first film, like even the whole opening of Aliens, where Ripley's going back. They do that hearing with the board, and she's explaining what's happened on the Nostromo and everything. It's like so in depth, and just and that is in terms of developing her character. It's kind of, and I don't mean to go too far off topic, but it's kind of like Sarah Connor in the Terminator films, where like Ripley in the first film, she's a bit of a kind of delicate flower, but by the end of it, she's toughened up, and by the second film, she is a real badass. And Ripley's the same as that as well. Like by the time of Aliens, like by the time she's setting foot back on that planet, like she's a different person, and you can see everything she's been through up until that point, and it's about to get a whole lot worse for her.
Yeah, that is a very good point. I mean, both of these are James Cameron concepts that have been developed and overblown. The Sarah Connor character and the character of Ripley, there are a lot of parallels. Both are survivors. Both were ordinary folks who were put into extraordinary positions and then had to adapt or die. So that's an interesting parallel.
Which makes
I
them
hadn't thought of it
relatable.
that way.
Yes, it definitely does. But yeah, and I mean, this movie for me, just a lot of times the movie itself is one thing, but the experience you had maybe discovering that movie is another. So, for example, Alien, I was about 6 or 7 years old when I first saw that. It really scared the crap out of me. It was great. I loved it. I rewatched it. You're scared, but you keep going back. But Aliens, my friend Vinny had a sleepover birthday party. We were 11 years old. His father rented this movie for us to watch. And I mean, if there was a better audience for it, I don't know what it was because we just absolutely loved this, man. We were in his living room, had the TV blaring, watching this movie. We were reenacting this all night long. We set up a fake, turret gun in his hallway. We were playing Aliens. We were turning the lights off, kicking the shit out of each other.
Yeah,
playing this game.
and that
It was a moment. So every time I
yeah.
rewatch this movie, I have those awesome memories of that great, just awesome time I had watching this. I mean,
Yeah, and obviously you couldn't have Aliens if you didn't have Alien to begin with, because this does build off of the story and the lore from the first film. And it's a totally different take on the idea. I mean, the first one, they're all civilians. They're guys who are not combat trained. They have some survival skills because they work in space, but they're not prepared for what they come up against. Whereas in the second film, it's like, okay, this could be more of a fair fight. We've got some battle hardened veteran Marines versus something nasty, and they've been on quote unquote bug hunts before, so they've come up against stuff, and they're thinking, it'll be more of the same. We'll blast it, it'll be done. And they're kind of mistaken on that, but
yeah,
still,
I think they definitely underestimated
yeah.
what they were
But
up against.
I love the way the Marines were portrayed. They're guys who are, jostled around the galaxy, put wherever humanity needs them. There's a lot of colonies. There's a lot of places out there that need protection, and so they're kind of. I wouldn't say that they're jaded, but maybe they're not as sharp as they should be because it's like we've seen it all before. It's no big deal, and then they're totally overwhelmed. What do we got
Yeah.
there? Hey,
Yeah.
Kieran.
Oh, we got some new people in the chat too. Chasing
Cool.
80s Toys. Hi, how you doing? TJC's here. I
Cool.
believe I also saw. I'm losing it here. Bill from Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures is here as well, and then Kieran Ball with an interesting to note that in the UK, Aliens has always been released on video, DVD, and Blu-ray in the extended special cut edition. So that's a fun fact.
Which is a better version? I mean, I've seen the theatrical cut and I've seen the director's cut. I don't know why the director's cut wasn't what ended up in theaters because it's just better. It tells a better story. It adds some places where, especially with the company man Burke and other things, they're part of the stories that are missing from the theatrical cut because I guess they were trying to cut it for time. Watch the director's cut if you have the opportunity. It's the better of the two versions. So
you're mentioning there, Largo, about the Marines being woefully unprepared. Or maybe not woefully, maybe that's a bit harsh, but they were definitely not sharpened enough or ready to deal with what they encountered. But I think James Cameron has said in interviews, since the movie, that he wanted to do a kind of Vietnam in space, a Vietnam War movie in space. So it's probably trying to reflect or reference the fact, of the American military going into Nam expecting, little resistance and then coming up against something a lot more complex than that. So I suppose he'd definitely pull that off with what happens to the Marines and aliens, because they do come in thinking, they're just going to mop up.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go rescue the colonists, probably end up with a few colonist women at the end of the mission, the whole thing, enjoying a few beers will be over and done with in no time. And, within 12 hours or whatever, the whole operation's a complete disaster.
yeah, a foobar as we call it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I would agree. In '86, Vietnam was still fresh in the minds of most folks, and it was very poignant that he was showing what some of the vets dealt with in real life in a very interesting sci-fi way. So definitely cool in the fact that he would put that aspect into the film, so that he wasn't preaching, but he was saying, hey, PTSD is a real thing. There's something about, soldiers going into a situation where, they're not ready for the trauma that they're going to deal with.
Yeah, TJC saying Aliens is one of his favorite films, action films, and it is. I mean, it's just wonderful. Hence, getting my boy the Nerf pulse rifle. I didn't know they made that. And
Yeah,
getting
That's
your
great. That's awesome.
sure you got your boy that because I bought my kids I bought it for the kids the Nerf Gatling gun when that came out. Back in like the
yeah,
2000s.
yeah.
But
It's
I
it's for the
totally
kids.
wanted to check
Yeah,
it out. It was all me.
yeah. It's like the boys are like, Dad, do we ever get to play? No, no.
Hold up, son.
I have seen a lot of folks buy that Nerf pulse rifle and convert it and make it more movie accurate, which is really neat because
Does it
the
have the
colors are.
counter on the side? It
It
has to have the
does.
digital
It
counter.
does. It does. Yeah.
So it's a cool model, but they made it in some very garish colors, I guess for safety reasons. So
Sure.
cosplayers and other folks have gone ahead and made it more movie accurate and made it really cool. So it's a neat thing. And of course, one of my favorite characters from the second film, and of course, Boba Hicks as well, is Corporal
He's my
Dwayne
man.
Hicks.
That's Reese.
And again, another Terminator alumni, Michael Bain, who played Reese, the future father of the savior of mankind, John Connor. In this, he played the senior corporal from the United States Colonial Marine Corps aboard the Sulaco, and he is one of only 4 survivors from this whole cluster that is the expedition to LV 426. So Ripley survives, Newt the kid, half of the android Bishop, and Hicks do make it out of the movie alive, which was another unique aspect. A lot of horror movies previously, there's only one lone survivor who gets to tell the tale. So in this one, we have a few more people left. And unfortunately, the version that we got in Aliens 3, the film, is very, very different from Aliens 3, the original script, and even the novelization, which I think is superior because in that, Hicks survives as well as Newt, and they have their own adventures. I don't know why Hollywood chose to go the way they did with Aliens 3, but I think it was a misstep. And there have been other stories that have been told that kind of give an alternate view, and we get to see more of Corporal Hicks in those stories. And we'll touch on that later. But why
Michael
is
Biehn
Hicks?
almost wasn't cast as Hicks. Did you know that? He was
I did not.
a replacement. I think it was James Spader, Ajax from the Warriors. He was originally cast for that role, and they did some principal photography with him. The actual armor that Michael's wearing in the film is actually James Spader's armor. I hope I'm getting his name right. I could be wrong, but someone Google it anyway. It definitely wasn't. It definitely wasn't originally going to be Michael Biehn in that role, and just at the last minute there was some type of falling out with James Cameron and the other guy, and they just got Michael Biehn to step in, and what a role! Like he nailed it. He just nailed it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. His casual sardonic wit. It's like, I do what I do. I get a paycheck.
Well, so me and my friends would argue who gets to be Hicks and then who gets to be, when we were reenacting the movie that entire night. So, I was proud to be Mr. Corporal Hicks myself, but, I won that fight.
It's iconic that he had his shotgun as well, just like Reese in Terminator. It just felt right.
Yeah, I like that he added that to his armament because it was like, it's for close encounters. And of course, another great character, Bishop, played by Lance Henriksen, the science officer on the Sulaco, and whose actions and self-sacrifice are critical to the survival of Ellen Ripley. When Ripley discovers that Bishop, like Ash from the first Alien film, is also an android, she treats him with extreme distrust due to her previous experiences. Yeah, and this ties more into the backstory of the company of Weyland-Yutani and some of their maybe sinister ideas for what they want to do with the xenomorph. So
we don't want to libel the company now, okay? So if any Weyland-Yutani executives are watching, we're not saying you are trying to do this, okay?
Allegedly.
It just kind of looks like it is sometimes. Yeah, allegedly, yeah.
Right. But
Another here's
great...
Kieran Ball with the
James Raymore. I said Spader.
Raymore.
Why did I say Spader? Of course, it wasn't James Spader. It's a completely different guy. Thank you, Kieran Ball. Thank you.
Hey, keep us honest, guys, in the chat.
Gojitron just correcting you. It's artificial person. Thank you very much.
Right. Got to be politically correct for the artificial people. Pretty soon we're going to have
Ripley at all for being distrustful of Bishop. I think anybody in her situation would feel totally uncomfortable with having an artificial person on board the ship.
Absolutely, especially when you look at the trauma that she's gone through. She survived a horrific ordeal, then finds out that she overshot her mark and has been in hypersleep for way longer than she should have been. She's pretty much missed the entire life of her daughter. And she's been accused of being inept and losing the company money. And it's just like, and then they tap her and say, hey, you want to go back to the scene of your greatest trauma and do it all over again? It's like, great.
And here's the company robot to go with you.
Yeah. No pressure. It'll be fine. Yeah. So, yeah, the company does not put itself in its best light in these films. Speaking of the company, Weyland-Yutani is consistently portrayed as exhibiting the worst aspects of corporate profiteering. And this is a trope that has definitely been seen in a lot of other sci-fi. And I think they can definitely look at their lineage and go back to Weyland-Yutani for that. Willing to sacrifice decency and life in the endless pursuit of monetary profits. In various portrayals within the Alien universe, Weyland-Yutani has its hands in all aspects of space colonization and research. The company has consistently driven its employees and agents to obtain a living sample of the species they designate Xenomorph XX121, often without regard for the lives of anyone involved in said attempts, so that the creatures may be exploited as biological weapons or otherwise for financial gain. Now, there is a caveat to that, and I found this when I was doing some of my research. According to Weyland-Yutani employee Carl Bishop Weyland, one of the company's primary goals behind capturing the xenomorphs and creating weapons out of their biology is to ensure humanity remains the elite species in the universe, and not just because of profits. So
noble, very noble.
Very noble, indeed.
They're building better worlds.
They are. It's right in the logo.
They offer excellent benefits as well. They have health insurance, they'll definitely look after your family if anything happens to you, which is highly likely, allegedly.
Exactly. Yeah, LexCorp in space. That's a great way to put it, Gojitron. So, yeah, a lot of, the evil company tropes we can definitely see are very similar to this. I don't know if Cameron had a particular axe to grind when he put this in there, but it was in the original film and the original script too, before Cameron was involved. So it has a lineage. So,
and Carter Burke is just the perfect representation of the company, just the slimy, duplicitous, just untrustworthy scoundrel.
Yeah. No one sheds a tear.
Representative right there.
Right. Nobody sheds a tear when he gets his just desserts. And in the extended cut, you get to see more of just how horrific his ending is. Now, this is something I didn't know existed, and I want a copy. Alien: The Illustrated Story is a 64-page critically acclaimed graphic novel. It's an adaptation of the 1979 science fiction horror film published by Heavy Metal Magazine. How cool is that? It was actually scripted by Archie Goodwin, which anybody who loves comics knows that name, and drawn by Walt Simonson, another great name. If you're a lover of Thor, Marvel stuff, you know the name. And those two guys came together to do this adaptation of the script of Alien. It was the first comic book of the Alien franchise, so this is long before Dark Horse did all their great stuff. It actually won major critical and commercial success and was the first comic to ever be listed on the New York Times bestsellers list. So this totally missed me. I didn't know this was a thing when I was a kid. If I had, I would have loved to have read it. Go ahead.
Just as he imagines Weyland-Yutani performed a hostile takeover of Omni consumer products at some point.
Oh yeah,
And then they
Omni
were both
consumer
bought
products.
by Cyberdyne Systems
Yeah, and
just
then
to merge the
apparently
triangle of evil there corporations.
saying, "Don't forget they did the Manhunter saga as well."
indeed. Yeah, great comic stuff. So they've got the chops and the lineage. So I'm sure
Yeah,
this
I
is
never
awesome.
knew about this either, so this is really fascinating.
Now,
But
Boba,
yeah,
you said you'd actually read this one.
I had read this one because so even though like I wasn't born until the 80s, so Alien was long already out before I watched it, but I actually had read this comic before I watched the film because I had older brothers and this was in my house. This was actually confiscated from me in school.
Oh
This- and,
wow.
I-
oh,
and I, you know, I managed to get it back, but the teacher at the time thought it was inappropriate reading material, obviously. But no, I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and especially we were talking earlier that in the first Alien film you don't really see the creature hardly at all. That's totally different in Alien, the illustrated story. You see it in explicit detail, and they don't cut back on the detail when it comes to the gore either. Like that chest burster scene, and that just looks. Even now, like I haven't looked at that in well over 20 something years, and I still vividly remember the panel of the chest burster. It was like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine this was definitely not geared towards young kids, which brings up another interesting point. The toys. This was very controversial when I was a kid. I remember this came out, and I remember seeing the toy commercials on TV, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. And I was like, "Well, I didn't get one. I didn't see it in stores." And the reason why is because Kenner was going to release a whole series on the first Alien movie. They did prototypes not only for the xenomorph, but also for some of the human characters as well. Never made it past the xenomorph because this hit the market. It uh, got a huge backlash from parents and certain uh, organizations, we'll say, that said this was too frightening for children. You shouldn't be doing toys based on an R-rated film, yada yada yada. And that was a
look at
debate that
that
went on
kid!
for quite a
Look at
while.
that kid on the picture on the left. Look at his face. That's the same
Oh
face
yeah,
I had when my grandmother handed me this. I was just,
oh yeah.
just blown away, Just
And that's the
blown
thing.
away.
Most of the kids who had this, they've never seen the film, don't know anything. All they know is it's a cool freaking looking alien with this weird skull looking
Mhm.
head, and it's got a mouth that you can make jump out of its face. Kids loved it, but
Oh
parents
yeah.
did not. What did you think of the controversy of R-rated toys for tots?
I think it's hilarious. I think as well now, maybe not so much with this original Canner one. I think with this particular one, they were just taking a chance because Star Wars toys, I guess, were about to be a big hit, and they just wanted to sell more space-related product. And they probably already had an easy in with 20th Century Fox, so it's like, yeah, let's just grab this Alien license and see what we can do. Am I correct in saying that the cancelled Kenner line of the human figures was what originally inspired reaction figures? Because I'm pretty sure their very first wave of figures was alien figures, and they were supposedly based on these unreleased Kenner molds.
Oh, I could see that for sure.
Right. Yeah, the reaction series, I guess, is trying to pay homage to what Kenner would have done.
Yeah,
But I believe the original Kenners were all in the 12-inch scale, similar to what they did with the Star Wars 12-inch figures. So I've seen some rough pictures of the prototypes, but I've never seen anything in full detail except for the xenomorph, and it's rather iconic and super rare and spendy now. If you can actually find one for sale, it's out there, but you're going to pay a premium unless you buy one of the reproductions that came out. I think NECA did a like an anniversary edition of this in the 7-inch scale that was very similar, but
it's
a lot of other
and it's very very difficult to find one that's not broken as well. Anytime I've ever just out of curiosity went looking at them, any of the ones that are affordable are pretty smashed up.
Yeah, I
yeah
distinctly remember the toy feeling cheap, even to me as a 5 or 6 or 7 year old. It felt more like the model kit plastic that you would get, like the testers kits or something where you would build a monogram, car model, and not
Hmm.
like a more rugged, solid toy plastic that you would see. But I haven't held one since I was, like I said, 5 or 6 or 7. I don't know, but I love
Yeah.
them. And specifically Aliens, I think would have made a. I mean, GI Joe was out at the time, but Aliens had it all. They had the aliens. They had the Space Marines. I mean, these guys. They had awesome ships and vehicles, and some of those things have come out since, but it was probably the perfect makings for a full fledged toy line of
Right.
the time.
Speaking of which, Kenner, while they didn't have success with the first film, when the second film came out and it had the Marines and more of an action um, grounding to it, more than science horror, it was more, an adventure story. They jumped on the license again, and so we got a 1992 line, which, as somebody who's worked at KB, I'm sure you saw a ton of these come through the
Yeah,
store.
mounds of them, mounds of them. Just
Yeah, they were everywhere. How prevalent was this in Ireland, Boba?
Yeah, they were all over the place, and the best thing about them was they were cheap, and especially when you're a kid with some pocket money, you could buy multiples of these. And I do remember one summer, my cousin and I pretty much collecting most of like what would have been the first wave, just because it was so. It just I don't recall ever seeing the toys for like full price. It's like they just arrived at a discount, and it was like, there you go, boys, £2 each, go wild. But it's
Yeah,
one of my favorite toy lines. I absolutely love this particular toy line. It's really colorful and just crazy, and the action features on the toys are mad. But it's a lot of fun. Um, I know it's initially based on that Operation Aliens cartoon, but I do think there is a kind of maybe acknowledgement by Kenner here that kids have probably seen films that they shouldn't be watching, and we're just going to be able to sell them toys off it, because they did this a lot. Like they did Aliens toys, Predator toys, Terminator toys, RoboCop
right.
toys. It's just they knew exactly what they were doing. And like,
Oh,
even if you
sure.
were to take my example of growing up, like my folks, they were fairly lenient with what it came when it came to me watching stuff. Like they didn't mind that I was watching stuff like Alien and Predator as a kid. Like it wasn't that big a deal. And I think a lot of parents, at least in my country, seem to be of a similar stance, because all my friends watched the same stuff. So you're watching these films, and then you're going into the shops and you're seeing toys that maybe, while they're not quite based on the film, the connection is there, and the only reason you
Sure.
know what they are is because of the film, because that cartoon was never released. And I don't think that cartoon ever would have made it, even if it was greenlit, because I just don't know how you could make an Aliens cartoon without it being incredibly violent and too violent for kids.
Yeah, I've never seen any footage of the cartoon. That's another rabbit hole to jump down. It was a cool concept. Maybe they could have made a kids version that was toned down a bit, but I don't know. It was
And it's also kind of late too, right? The movie came out in
yeah.
95 or 90 or 85 or 86, and then 7 years later they're coming out with this toy line. I know they were trying to reboot it into a cartoon and everything, but
Well, I
um,
think that the premise was Aliens 3 was going to be coming out, and they wanted to put out something that would be around the same time as that was going to hit theaters. This cartoon was supposed to be released right around the same time as the toys. That's why they have the colors they do.
mm,
These are actually what the characters would have looked like in the cartoon. That's why they don't look movie accurate. I always thought it was kind of a misstep. They had kind of limited articulation. As you can see, Ripley here is molded to hold her, big gun, which is,
that's a turbo torch, turbo
yes,
with real turbo torch action.
yes. God love him. Kenner had a thing for oversized, gadgetry toys that weren't, scaled to the figure, and it was a thing. I didn't care for it, but some people did. It,
It
it
was
was not a.
the aliens themselves that were the stars of that toy line.
Oh
Like
yeah,
like the human figures look nice, but it's the aliens that are the real main eventers.
Definitely. I think we have a couple examples. We'll get to those. First off, talking about at this point in time, yeah, the Aliens film had already been out and wildly successful. We're starting to see things coming out on DVD. You can go to your video store and rent it. That's why a lot of kids knew about it. But also, they knew about it from the comic books. We have starting from around '88. We've got the Dark Horse comic books, which were fantastic. Um, really good stories, great artwork, and they took basically what came from the first two films, ignoring what happened in three because that was kind of disappointing, and they really expanded on what would have happened with Newt and with Corporal Hicks and the other Colonial Marines when they had round two against these aliens and many other encounters. So great storylines. They went into some really cool alternate stories, and I love these. Did you guys read any of these when you were
As a matter of
younger?
fact,
Oh, I
I
loved
did.
them. I absolutely loved them.
Yeah.
By the time I started reading them, though, they had already Alien 3 had already been released, so
Mm,
they had went back and retconned the names of Hicks and Newt. They changed their character names to like Wilkes and Billy. So as it would make sense because in the actual official continuity they were dead, so you couldn't have these comics with them alive
right.
supposedly or whatever. So yeah, but that being said, it was pretty obvious to me who they were. Like even without knowing that, it was like this is really strange. Like it's clearly Hicks and Newt. Yes, they're called something else.
Yeah.
Thankfully though they did re-release them as a special edition a few years ago. You can buy them in a hardback now with the original versions.
Yeah, I think most fans have reached a point where they're just like, whatever they did in the film in Aliens 3, can we just please forget that and go back to what could have been? Because everybody
Mhm.
loved Hicks. They liked the character of Newt. And there were stories yet to tell there that they just kind of skipped over. And that was a bad call.
Yeah.
So
Well, when I was 14, I had my first job. I was able to legally get a job at the supermarket pushing carts and stuff. And my first paycheck was for $42. And recently, a comic book store opened within walking distance of my house. So I went there and I got my first paycheck. I thought I'd pick up a couple things. I think I bought myself a sandwich and a milkshake. Then I walked to the comic book store and I came back with a bag full of comics and no money. I spent every cent I had at that comic store because, at the newsstand or the corner store, you can pick up Marvel and DC titles pretty regularly. But I had never heard of Dark Horse, and it
mm,
wasn't until I went there, I was talking to the shop owner, and he's like, "Oh, you like the movie? You'll love this." And I think they were a little more expensive, but I was like, "Yeah, I just bought everything." I did that probably about five more times where I just blew my whole paycheck at the comic store until I think my parents were like, "What are you doing with all that money you're making?" And yeah, but yeah, it was great because up until that time, most of the stories, like I said, were just pick up a newsstand issue of something
right.
and just read it, and most of the time it was like Marvel and DC, cool stuff. But this was different. It was a different type of they used like a thicker paper too. It was like that
Right.
glossy, like
Like
real.
back
So
I
it was
think,
like for
yeah,
me, it was like
prestige format or a Baxter
yeah, it
paper I think
was
was
a much
popular.
different like experience. Reading it, I felt like I had leveled up in my comic collecting or comic reading
Yeah.
because of it. Yeah.
How about in Ireland? Were there late '80s, early '90s? You guys have a lot of comic shops and novelty shops.
So comic shops were virtually non-existent until the 90s. And even then, you're talking about they're springing up in places like Dublin and Belfast, Galway, like the big cities. Though it was still fairly easy for me to get comics just in newsagents. Like the only thing over here was we were usually a few months behind. So like whatever issue you have out in February, we might not get till May or something like that. But we were able to get a lot of the American titles. And in the 90s, especially, I remember picking up a lot of the Alien stuff. It was already starting to be released in collected volumes, so it was pretty easy to get the full stories and get a good lay of the land, so to speak, in terms of what was going on. I absolutely love those comics. Like they're so good. They're really. like I since went back and I think I bought all the Dark Horse omnibuses going right up to like the final run of them. I just think it was a spectacular series.
Yeah, and this was really the first, in my experience, the first time we saw where the two big powerhouses of DC and Marvel were getting a run for their money. Dark Horse was doing great work. They had Conan, they had Aliens, they had a couple of other lines that were definitely getting a lion's share of the market at that time. You know, people were kind of tired of some of the superhero tropes and they were looking for something more original
Yeah.
or at least more interesting. And Dark Horse was providing that. So I've had a few of these collected editions as well as some of the loose copies here and there over the years. Some of these are still available. I believe Dark Horse still has the rights to print these. The franchise license has since moved to Marvel, and I think the parent company of Disney now has the rights for the Alien franchise. So God knows
Oh
how that's
dear.
going to go. Indeed, there's not happy news, but we'll wait and see. But in other media, this is one I recommended to Will. There was a trilogy of novels that have since been turned into audiobooks that are fantastic. In 2016, Out of the Shadows came out, and I have it on Audible, the audiobook version, where it's not just a narrated book. They actually got a whole cast together and did an audio drama. And it is a story that picks right up from what we see in the first two films. And it kind of fills in some of the other corners of this alien universe of what's going on with Weyland Yutani, with the xenomorph, and other people who have encountered it. So it's a trilogy. Out of the Shadows being the first, Alien Sea of Sorrows, and Alien River of Pain. Highly recommend picking all three of these up. If you're an audio book fan, get the Audible version, or you can get them in
Or
text.
paperback form.
Indeed.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's good stuff.
definitely worth the read, and without spoiling anything or revealing too much. Like I was actually very surprised at how connected they actually were to the films. I just assumed, oh look, you know, it's a licensed Alien book. It's set in the Alien universe, but there's probably not going to be anything in it that would affect the events of the films. But I was wrong in that instance. So that's all I'll say about that.
Well, if
Yeah,
it's
it
done
was.
well, it's even better, you know. So it sounds
Yeah,
like they
it's
did do it well.
yeah, it's very well done. I would have loved to have seen these done as maybe a TV miniseries or even a separate film series. They're that good. So, and of course, then we get into some of the more bizarre crossovers. Some of these were cool. Some of them were kind of clunkers. Which of these have you guys had experience with? Any?
All of them
All of
for me.
fair. Yeah. I'm a sucker for DC, so anytime I see Superman going up against something, I'm like, I got to check it out.
I
Superman
read the
Aliens.
Batman. I read the Batman Aliens. I picked that up from
Okay.
that comics shop, and yeah, I liked it. You know, but I don't think I read the other ones, or I can't recall
But
reading.
looking at the presentation you have here, I enjoyed Superman Aliens first couple of runs. Same with Batman and Aliens. That one there with Superman and Batman versus Aliens and Predator, it was too
Yeah, they kind
much
of.
and yet not enough. It was just all over the
I
place.
I agree. I would almost say they jumped the shark a bit in that one. It was a bit too far. But you know, the first ones were pretty good, and they're worth taking a look at. I think some of these are still available on like Comixology, and there are collected volumes because they did multiple different encounters. Unfortunately, these were not in regular continuity because they were in agreement with Dark Horse. They published them as kind of one shots, and as Dragon Balls there points out to us, there is a Wildcats, and I have a copy of that here. Wildcats is different, whereas Judge Dredd, Green Lantern, Superman, Batman, all that had encounters, those were non-continuity. Wildcats was very different. Image, and particularly at that point in Image, they were doing the Wildcat series, and they had just done what was it, The Authority. So they were looking at changing things over from The Authority to go to what they called Stormwatch, and not all the characters were going to be reused. So when Warren Ellis was approached with this, he was kind of like, that sounds goofy. I don't want to do it. He's like, look, you can kill off major characters and it's okay. And he's like, really? Let me think about it. So the Wildcat Aliens crossover is in the continuity of the Image comics, and the characters that died in that stayed dead. And,
Interesting.
yeah, that was definitely a different approach from other comic crossovers. It was very well done. So, food for thought. The Judge Dredd one I have not read, but I'm curious about. That would be an interesting pairing. Have you read
It is
it?
good. Both the Judge Dredd Aliens and Judge Dredd Predator crossovers are very good. Dredd, he seems to suit both universes well. He's a good foe for either creature.
Thank you for the correct. They started with Stormwatch and then they went to the Authority. My bad. I always get those mixed up, especially since they've gone into the DC continuity and then it's gotten really wacky. But yeah, it was an interesting transition that they made. Yeah, I love Judge Dredd. I've read a lot of the 2000 AD stuff. I haven't read any of the crossover stuff, but I'm curious. I might have to pick that up. And of course, Aliens made their way into video games too. This one was wildly popular. I have not played Colonial Marines, but I've heard from a lot of gamers that they love this version because it's what everybody wanted: Marines versus bugs. It's a bug hunt, and it's got a good storyline, and it definitely has some ties to other threads of the alien universe, and there are consequences. Have you ever played some of the video games? Either of you?
So I've played a lot of the video games myself. Now this particular video game, Colonial Marines, it was praised highly for the story because it kind of it goes off in an offshoot it doesn't it basically look I hope I'm not spoiling too much for people, but it essentially undoes the beginning of Alien 3. It ignores Alien 3. It resets to the end of Aliens, and you discover that Hicks does in fact survive, and so does Newt, and all is good. And there's a whole colonial marine mission that returns to the planet where the base is half exploded and all this stuff. And it's but the game itself, I think, and I think the reason it kind of bombed out was because there'd been a load of development delays and it kept on being pushed back. I think when they did finally release it, there was lots of glitches and bugs and stuff in the game. So even though it's a very unfortunate, because it was, from a storyline perspective, it was giving us exactly what we wanted, but as a game, it was a bit sucky. And I ended up paying only like $5 for this game because it did so badly that within a few months they were just practically giving it away. So
Wow.
yeah, but still, I'll tell you one game that's really good if you want to get into any modern Alien games is Alien Isolation. It's a fantastic game where you play as the daughter of Alan Ripley, who's Amanda Ripley, and it's a real scary, heart-pounding thriller of a game. So if you are looking to get into the modern Alien games, I'd highly recommend that one.
Yeah, the Amanda Ripley story I didn't put into the slides here, but what a fascinating story! I love the fact that they pick up with that legacy. Hey, Tony, good to see you.
Yep.
I would have loved to have seen that get more explored, and obviously it did in some of the novels, and as you say in the gameplay. There's so many different corner aspects of the Alien universe that are ripe for good storytelling. So
Yeah,
hopefully,
I was going to say, unfortunately, I've never played a good Aliens game. So I think the last one I tried was for the Atari Jaguar. If you remember that one.
yeah,
They made
yeah.
like an Alien vs Predator, which was like a really bad shooter, and that was the last of it. But I haven't played a video game in years. Watch my kids play it every once in a while. But yeah, but I'd like to check that one out. So thanks, Bubba.
Yeah, there have been a ton of games that they slap the Alien label on, and it's like, no, not so good. But now we're going to move on to our other alien species, the Predator, another fan favorite. Predator franchise depicts a series of deadly encounters between humanity and a hostile trophy hunting extraterrestrial species known as the somebody help me with that pronunciation.
Yautja.
Jauta, Gesundheit, predominantly transpiring in the present day of the 20th and 21st century. The series comprises films that, while largely independent, portray human confrontations with the Yautas in different locations. Drawn by heat and conflict, the creatures have been traveling to Earth for centuries in order to hunt humans, the planet's most dangerous game. And man, these are fun. These are just fun movies, fun romps. Lots of lots of ultra violence, and what a cool character. First introduced in the film of the same name, the creatures returned in the sequels Predator 2 in 90, Predators in 2010, and The Predator in 2018. The latter two of which also introducing the rival clan of Hish Q10. The prequel, Prey, recently came out in 22, as well as the crossover films Aliens vs. Predator and Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. Your mileage may vary on some of the sequels. The first two are classics. I don't think anybody would disagree that the first two are really well done. After that, I liked Predators. I thought it was an interesting premise. I have not seen Prey. I've heard some people like it. I've heard some people loathe it. The AVP stuff, the comics were much better than the films, in my opinion. What do you guys think of some of these?
Well, I think Predator, the first Predator, is just great. I mean, I was telling you earlier, I think the first half of the Predator is the best G.I. Joe movie, or one of the best G.I. Joe movies ever made, when
Yes.
before they encounter the Predator, and then after they encounter it, it just keeps getting better and better. As far as some of the sequels go, I liked Predator 2. Predators, I enjoyed. It's like a Predator movie by itself, when not compared to the other Predator movies, is a decent movie. If it just came out as a sci-fi movie, you'd probably say it was okay. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
But when compared to the first one, I don't think any of them live up to the first one.
No.
I know that some arguments are made for Predator 2, but they're all decent. They're all decent movies, but they're not, the best.
Fair enough.
They're using the name and kind of skating by on that.
What do you think, Boba?
Yeah, the first film really blew my mind when I watched it. Especially the very first time. I actually think it was on late one night when I was a kid on TV, and I actually missed the opening credits of the film. So when I flicked it on, I just saw Arnold Schwarzenegger talking to the general guy, getting the details of the mission. So I just assumed, I knew who Arnold Schwarzenegger was. I'd watched Commando and Terminator and loads of stuff. So I just thought, oh, it's just going to be another army action movie. And obviously you get a half hour into the film and then all of a sudden there's an invisible alien and things just get a whole lot different. So yeah, the first movie blew my mind. The special effects, the acting, the setting, the tension. It was so original, and the reveal in the final stages of the movie when you actually get to see what the Predator looks like, the actual animatronic effects for the mandibles in its face and everything. It's a fantastic looking creature. Stan Winston really outdone himself when coming up with that whole appearance of the face and everything. So yeah, it totally blew my mind. Predator 2, I do really enjoy. I think at the time, it was kind of greeted with a lukewarm response because people just were disappointed in comparison to it, just not being what they expected after watching the first film. It probably did hurt us a little bit that Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't involved with it. And I think if he had been involved with Predator 2, the whole franchise as we know it probably would have went in a different direction. But Predator 2 for what it is, it's still really good. I really enjoy Danny Glover's character in it. Bill Paxton is absolutely brilliant in it. Pulling double duty there in both the Aliens and Predator franchises. I just love his cocky cop character. He's got his
Right.
lucky 8 ball and stuff like just a really memorable, cool character. Gary Busey, he's brilliant in the movie as well. Lots of really memorable characters. Also, it expanded the lore of the Predator universe in the sense that we got to see multiple predators, we got to see the interior of the ship, and of course it planted the seeds of the whole alien versus predator deal, because you see the xenomorph skull inside the alien ship. So
Right.
Predator 2, like you say, Largo, your mileage may vary with the sequels, but I think of all the sequels, Predator 2 is definitely the strongest.
And none
I
of
would
them beat Predator for the quotes. I mean, there's
Oh,
more
yeah.
quotes in Predator, and that falls off. I can't even remember a quote from like the second or third movie.
The most manly handshake in cinema,
You son
between
of a
Arnie.
bitch.
Yes. So great. Such a meme. Yeah, Predator was groundbreaking in the fact that it was all action, but it was sci-fi, but it was, a very good story underneath it. When you look at their original mission of what they were supposed to go there for, you're expecting it to be one film, and like you say, about halfway it twists, and suddenly you're in something completely different. I definitely, in a perfect world, I would have loved to have seen these as O-ring Joes, because it was the first half of the first part of the film. It definitely gave me,
Yeah.
GI Joe vibes. You've got this, the Jesse Ventura character with this giant, gun that's just totally, crazy for a guy to try to hold and fire. Very over the top characters with they're well done in the way that they're introduced quickly, and you automatically get an idea of, oh, I like this guy, and this guy has a certain personality, and then suddenly they're not as tough as you think they are, or at least compared to their adversary. Yeah,
He does
yeah,
say it.
he does say
It is
that.
pretty funny.
Yeah, the second film was a whole different animal. I do think it was a misstep. I would have loved to have seen Dutch come back as a special agent with the government, with Gary
Mhm.
Busey's character.
Yeah.
That would have been a perfect fit, because he was a veteran. He survived. He's dealt with these before. It would have made sense for him to show up there. I guess he either wasn't available or was too expensive. I don't know. But
It was T2. I think T2, the
Ah.
pre-production of it, threw a spanner in the works with timelines of work schedules. So, and if the studio were just greedy, or I guess, and they just wanted to bull on ahead without him, so they went ahead, and that's what happened.
yeah, and there was, a pretty good gap between the two films too, as far as
Yeah.
timelines. So they did work on developing a story, and I'm pretty sure what ended up on film was not the original script. I'm sure they had some very different ideas at one point or another. But yeah, I liked it. And again, like I said, Predators was not terrible. I liked the idea of taking, the best of human killers and putting them in a game preserve and then seeing how they do. It was a fun idea. But yeah, that costume, Stan Winston, who was not their first choice, when they brought him on board to try to correct some of their first missteps with the Predator costume and idea, he knocked it out of the park. He gave us a very iconic villain, who you figure out is not really a villain. He's just, a very different race, and they are noble in their own way. Um, While brutal and cruel by human standards, the Predators are disciplined warriors bound by a strict code of honor. They primarily target individuals who can theoretically fight back, such as soldiers, criminals, law enforcement. They will not harm unarmed civilians, pregnant women, children, or those with a debilitating condition or illness. The Yauta race, or at least a faction within it, are also known to abduct humans, among other beings, and hunt them on planets which they maintain as game preserves. Of course, the third movie shows us that. But I think we've also seen that in some of the comics and graphic or other novelizations. Cool ideas. And the more you get to see this race, the more you realize in some stories they are the hero. They're looking at not only testing themselves, bloodying themselves against a worthy opponent, but when you see them going up against the aliens and other critters, they're actually doing a little pest control for the universe.
True.
Definitely,
True.
definitely. And I did enjoy that concept in Predators of them actually having a game preserve where they've brought all these abducted beings from worlds all over the galaxy essentially to hunt. I also like the idea of them introducing the different type of predator. You know, they had the super predators in that movie. They were a little bit bigger and a little bit uglier than the usual predator breed. So you had all of a sudden you had a hierarchy in the society of the species, which was something new. You know, I do enjoy when a sequel introduces new ideas that expand the lore outwards, you know, and gives you more to think about and more things to consider. And I do think that Predators, you know, look, I don't enjoy it as much as Predator and Predator 2, but it's once again it's you know, there's a lot worse than it, which I'm sure we'll get to. My God, Predator in 2018, like I almost walked out of the cinema when I went to see, like I don't like that film at all.
No.
And this is coming from someone who sat through the two AVP films, like, which I'm not really fond of either. But the Predator in 2018 is.
Oh my
God.
We'll get there.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't even include it because it was such a shit show. It was so bad. They made it, you know, a kind of a dark comedy that wasn't funny. So, you know,
Not like a wannabe Marvel movie.
Yeah. I was. Yeah. It was like they were trying to do their MCU version. They're trying to create a lore, and I don't know what they were thinking, but it didn't work. And I don't think they had much success with that at the box office.
No.
So, interesting side note from the original film. Some people know this, some may not. The original Predator was supposed to be Jean-Claude Van Damme. He was, originally cast because of his martial arts. They wanted to create kind of a ninja-esque guy who could really go up against these hardened military mercenary types, and very different from what we actually ended up with. And as we'll see here, there's a look at the original costume that poor Jean-Claude had to endure. The first was more of a mantis-like look to the character, the Predator. Van Damme had to walk on stilts because it had backward bent reptilian legs and it had extended arms. It was just too clumsy. Even on level ground, this thing was hard to manipulate. So when they took it to the actual jungles of Mexico, it was just totally impossible. It just didn't work. And they scrapped this idea and started over. And that's when Stan Winston stepped in and gave us a Predator that we know and love. But did you guys know much about this, the early workings of the film and the pre-production stuff?
I found out about it essentially when the DVD came out in the early 2000s and they had a big kind of making of featurette. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And you know what? Look, I do like Jean-Claude Van Damme, but it's definitely for the better that they decided not to go with him and not to go with that look. Even just, you know, thinking how the first film would have worked out. Like, can you imagine that final act where Dutch is setting traps and preparing to go to battle with the Predator? Like that entire concept just would not work with Jean-Claude Van Damme being a kind of ninja-esque karate wielding kind of alien, you know?
Come and kill me. And then he does a split and just wiggles through the trap. No problem. That'd be horrible. Hey guys, Jim, I'm sorry I didn't tell you this ahead of time. If you don't mind, if I could just share something. It's some actual test footage of Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Really?
I have it right here.
Sure.
Hold on one second. Let me see if I can just share this real quick. Bear with me, folks. Here it comes. And there you go, right there. So just terrified the audiences enough. I don't know if you got that, but yeah.
Which film was that a scene from that he did?
That's from Kickboxer.
Right. Yeah, I'm just as much as I love, you know, the action movies that Jean-Claude has done, I just can't see him being an equal opponent with, you know, Dutch. Just wasn't going to work. And the guy they did choose was a much better choice and an interesting character in and of his own, you know, from things that he's done. So some people may know this name from other things he's done. This is Kevin Peter Hall, and he is another big boy. He stood 7 feet 2 inches, or 2.18 meters. Big guy. He had just recently done Harry and the Hendersons, where he played a Sasquatch or Bigfoot.
Loved it.
Out of the costume, the first place I'd ever seen him was an oddball show called Misfits of Science, where he played a scientist who was trying to learn how to adjust his height and ended up shrinking himself to like doll proportions.
Yes, I remember
it was
that.
a fun show. He's a good actor. Was a good actor. Sadly, he passed much too young, but he was picked to play the Predator in the newly designed suit, which was definitely much more menacing and looked better on screen against big guys like Arnie.
That moment when you see the Predator towering over the tiny little Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's like, it makes Arnold look puny, and you just see that he's massive. It's just so well done.
It really made it work a lot better. I think that choice is what made the film successful. As mentioned here, he played the Predator in the first 2 films. He was trained in the art of mime, and he used a lot of his skills as well as tribal dance moves in the way that he made the Predator move. Like the fight between Arnie and the Predator at the end of the movie. That was based on a lot of choreography and dance moves that he used, and it worked.
Yeah, Kieran Ball with the fun fact: Kevin Peter Hall also played the helicopter pilot, or the get to the chopper, right? The chopper pilot
right?
who rescued Arnold at the end of Predator. Awesome.
Very cool. That I did not know. It's a nice little Easter egg. I'll have to go back and watch and check that out. But
you'll see him. He looks right at the camera as well, so you'll recognize him.
And isn't that a great twist at the end, though, where you see the Predator laying there, he's spitting glowing blood out, and then he just starts laughing, and you're like, "What's going on?" You don't get it, And then he's like, "Ha ha ha!" And you see the timer going, and it's just
right, and it clicks. It's like, uh-oh. Yeah, it was great.
So
it was
well
fun.
done.
Speaking of Easter eggs and things I didn't know, the vocal effects for the Predator were provided by Peter Cullen. Our favorite voice from Transformers and other great iconic characters that he's created with his voice. He made the clicking growling noise so that he wouldn't strain his voice. Apparently, not long before this, he had done a voice for King Kong in the remake, and it had really put some stress on his vocal cords. So he wanted to do something a little easier, came up with the clicking growl thing, and that became the iconic sound for the Predator. So who knew? I didn't know. Did you guys know?
No, this one blew me away. And I was shocked. And not surprised, though, because it's awesome.
Yeah, super nice guy, excellent voice actor, and I did not know this was in his portfolio. And of course, coming back around to Kenner and all things cool toy wise, this was kind of an extension of their Aliens line that was already existing. So they just branched off into Predator toys in '94. Some of these tied in with the Aliens that they already had. There were also some cool vehicles that came out with this as well. And they just kind of mashed it together. You had the Alien and the Predator stuff on the toy aisle all together. And even if you hadn't seen the film, you'd look at these and go, these are cool Alien toys or Predator toys. I want these. And some of the gadgets were cool. Some of them were horrible.
Yeah.
Very gimmicky, but the characters were pretty fun. Did you have some of these growing up?
Well, I had, yeah. I had plenty of them. I absolutely loved the line. And yeah, I had all the garish, multicolored, like Lava Planet Predator was probably my favorite, like a luminous red Predator, ridiculous gimmicks, but very colorful and great, fun to play with. And it was just more of that kind of being in tune with Aliens and Predator being very much linked to each other. Even though I know they released a few Predator figures on their own first, but it didn't take them long before they had that Aliens versus Predator branding, and it was just you just associated the two things together. And the Predators kind of replaced the Marines as like the hero characters in the line, which I kind of
Right.
preferred better because, as we mentioned earlier, like those Marines, they were okay, but like the posing and that was a bit weird. The Predators were just a bit more bigger, a bit more colorful, and yeah, I really enjoyed that line.
Yeah, this is one thing, I think Kenner, God bless him, they learned from doing the multicolored Batman from their Dark Knight collection. It's like different flavors of main characters in different colors will sell. So yeah, they did a rainbow version of all the different
Oh
predators.
yeah.
Some were
Every
outlandish.
environment, every element. You need a water version. You need lava. You need space. You need everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but they
yeah,
were
this
cool.
line was probably like this is my late teens, early 20s. So this kind of whole era, I remember seeing them on store shelves, but I didn't really have many of them. I didn't get back into toy collecting until like 98 or 99, and then but yeah, there was tons of these in the clearance bins,
Oh
at
yeah,
KB Toys, 3 for 10, 2 for 5. These were all those fillers that we would have, but they look
I think
cool.
they.
And
Yeah, I think
yeah, they
they
reused a lot
definitely.
of molds too. And if you look on that one card back, you could see there's that blue ship. It's the one all the way on the right. That's a
Right.
reuse of the GI Joe Fire Bat, and that's like one of the second reuses of that mold that we saw when Hasbro took over Kenner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I really kind of wish they had gone a different route. I mean, especially now that Hasbro was involved, I would have loved to have seen these in more of the GI Joe scale. Whether they were
Hmm.
done as O-ring characters, which was still around at this point, or later on when they did the 4-inch stuff. If they brought back an Aliens Colonial Marines line, that would have been a slam dunk, man. I think these guys belonged with the Joes as far as playability. The Colonial Marines and the Joes, just like the characters from the first Predator film, would have been great in the Joe series.
Oh, I would have loved them.
Um, yeah, missed opportunity in my opinion. NECA has gone on and done a few of these. We've gotten some of the alien characters. We've gotten some of the Predator human characters. I know they've done Dutch. They've done one of the other females. I think was from one of the video games they put out. I'm not sure what else. Boba, you have some of the NECA stuff. Do you have much of the Predator or mostly Alien?
Oh, I have a lot of both actually. Up until 2018 or thereabouts, I was just buying nearly anything they put out that had the words aliens or predator on it. Up until they got up where they'd reached the alien resurrection stage of
Hmm.
figures, and I was like, nah, I don't really
Yeah,
need to go any further with this. So, but
yeah.
yeah, I actually two hands. I do have one of their Kenner tribute sets. This was released by NECA a
Oh,
few
nice.
years ago, so they went for the kind of colorful or more kind of comic inspired kind of look, but they've duplicated the packaging, the old Kenner packaging, very well, even on the back, the way they've done the cross sell.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
So
very cool.
they do release nice homage stuff to Kenner, NECA
very
folks.
cool. And speaking of that, I think I have an image here of the when they
That's
did start.
the very one it's based on. Yeah.
Yeah. So they, for a brief while, they did an Aliens versus Predator line, and it was just basically repaints of characters they'd already introduced in the Kenner lines before. There were only two sets like this made. There was this one, which was the original, which has your prototypical Predator, pretty much based on the first film's Predator, going up against an alien, and then they did a secondary one, very similar. And yeah, NECA redid those in a very cool way, as you just showed. I have a couple of the NECAs. To be honest, I was not greatly impressed. The quality of the joints on these, the sculpt is beautiful,
No, they look
and
great.
the details are awesome. Some of the paint apps are kind of hit and miss. The joints are kind of sticky, I guess is a good way to put it, and they are prone to breakage, at least
Hmm.
in the examples I've
I'm
found. Now
No, you're
they did do,
absolutely correct. They
yeah,
are very brittle. There's no denying it, really. I suppose
yeah,
like it's always going to be the elephant in the room with NECA figures. They look great. but don't look at them funny or they will just shatter into a million
Yeah.
pieces.
When they did this one, which is one of their ultimate editions, the plastic does seem to be improved from previous models. This one is not as brittle, flexible tail, and just beautiful artwork. They're just great sculpts. So I have those examples that eventually will show up in some toy photography here and there. But I didn't go hog wild just because my previous experiences with NECA kind of left a bad taste. But they do seem to be improving, so I'll say that. And again, with Predator, just like with Aliens, Dark Horse delivered, and great standalone one shots as well as ongoing series. This is a currently available omnibus that is a collection of some of the earlier Predator stories that they did: Concrete Jungle, Cold War, and Dark River, respectively. Highly recommend. Good artwork, good stories. They continue the lore of, the predators coming to Earth at different eras and testing themselves. What do you guys think of these? Have you read some of them?
Oh yeah. I'll let you go first, though. Will
No, I haven't. I actually the Predator series is the one that I think I have no experience with in the comic form. One of the things that I wish I had seen. I like the idea of like Predator, the Predators visiting Earth and different eras and stuff like that. But I would love to see. Is there ever like a story where a predator hunts a completely different species, like on a different planet, like where we just see, like maybe from the predator's point of view, them hunting some other humanoid, somewhere else, or how many?
There is examples of them. I think there's a couple of short stories where you see them in different environments hunting non-human prey.
Yeah,
that are quite
cool.
interesting.
Excuse me, guys. I got to jump out for a second, but Will, I'll let you take the run. I'll be right back.
They've got an entire universe. It's kind of like with Star Wars, how they keep going back to Tatooine, and I'm like, that planet was a backwater. You don't have to keep going back there. There's an entire universe to explore. So I was just saying, for the Predator series, it would be kind of cool. I'd be interested in seeing stories like that. But no, I don't really have much experience.
You do flesh it out a little bit in those comics when it comes to their non-human foes. The first, I suppose, few comics, Concrete Jungle and Cold War, they're actually direct sequels to the first Predator film, and
cool.
The main character is actually supposed to be Arnold Schwarzenegger's brother, more or less his twin brother. He's even drawn to look like him. So, and Concrete Jungle, obviously it's set in the city, and the predators hunting criminals and all that stuff. It's very, very similar to the story they ended up going with for Predator 2, which makes it, once again, I know I mentioned it earlier, it does make you wonder what if they'd gotten Arnold back, for that sequel. It just felt like it was tailor made for him. Cold War was a good one as well. It was interesting kind of to see the predators in a snowy Russian, I think they're like in Alaska or someplace like that. Kind of goes against the whole thing of the predators enjoying warm weather, but we'll just ignore that.
But yeah, definitely interesting. I'd be definitely interested in picking these up and checking them out.
Yeah, I would recommend them. So definitely good stories. And following along in that same line, they eventually got into the Aliens versus Predator as a concept in their graphic novels. Now, I believe these actually came out prior to the film version. Mm-hmm. So some of these stories, in my opinion, were superior to what they did on film.
Far and large. I mean, so much better. And it was one of those things where even like when you heard the concept Freddy versus Jason, you were like, oh, this is going to be great. And then, the movie came out. And
yeah,
it was when you heard about it, you're like, yeah, that's such a great idea. Of course, it makes sense. But the comic did a pretty good job. But I think
I think an important distinction to make, especially because we're kind of getting to the stage now where we're moving into the entanglement of the two brands, and just to avoid confusion, I would like to point out the fact that it's Aliens versus Predator. That's the comic, and when I see Aliens and even that font, it's set in the Aliens universe, so it's set in the future. You've got colonial marines, you've got space, you've got like spaceships. It's very very sci-fi, whereas the movie is Alien versus Predator, and it's kind of set in the present day, and you just it just takes away a lot of the magicness and general, just it's just so boring and mundane.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you go to Earth of all the places you could set it on? Why would you set it on present day Earth? It just baffled me when they released the films like that.
Yeah, it may have been a budgetary issue or just whoever wrote the script hadn't read the comics. I don't know. But I found this interesting when I was doing some research. According to the notes, which accompany the first Aliens versus Predator graphic novel, the concept of combining Aliens and Predator came from Dark Horse. It was a result of late 1980s brainstorming sessions with some of the comic creators and executives at Dark Horse. And they're like, where are we going to go with this story? And it's like, two great tastes. It tastes great together, baby. Put them together and let's see where we go. Because it had already been, as you said, Boba, it had already been hinted at in the second sequel. We saw an Easter egg kind of thing of a alien head as a trophy inside of the Predator ship. So the seeds were planted, and everybody wanted to know, how this was going to play out. The many stories have done in the comics, graphic novels, the novelizations, really well done. Unfortunately, both films fell short because there's basically one extended story in the film. The sequel wasn't much better than the original, in my opinion. But, what could have been would have been really cool. One of the things I love about the stories that we see in the comic book form, at least from Dark Horse, you have the aliens as a major threat to humanity. You have the Predators, who are a rival race with humanity. And then you have the colonial marines and other humans kind of stuck in the middle. It's like, we're out in space and we're getting a black eye here. We thought we were the top of the food chain. We are not. And in some cases, the colonial marines make truces with the Yutani, how do you say their name? The Predators.
Yeah.
They end up working with them against the alien threat in some cases, and it's well done. So, yeah, I would have loved to have seen a film set in the future with the colonial marines and the Predators and the aliens. I think that would have been much better. But, at least we got crossovers. Crossovers are fun. The idea that the Predators being a timeless race, that they could show up anywhere in our human past or present, or, whether they show up in Metropolis or Gotham City or who knows where, it was kind of fun. And of course, if you're an apex predator looking for the most dangerous game, you got to go up against the Bat. I'm sure he had a rep.
Yeah, those
I
first
like the
couple of
idea of
Batman
Batman.
Predator crossovers were good.
Yeah. Superman versus Predator, I don't know. I just feel like Superman would just, I don't know.
Well, they kind of, I think
they had no, I could be misremembering it. It's a while, but I think that the Superman was ill. He essentially has he picks up an alien disease from an alien ship, which causes his powers to wane. So it's more of an even fight between him and the Predator. That's how they kind of sidestep around it. The problem is when they kept making sequels and then they were just running out of contrived ideas to make the battles equal, so.
Yeah, exactly. They did come up with an interesting plot device to give Superman more equal footing. I think they did the same thing with Superman Aliens. They came up with a way to make him susceptible. And they were interesting, fun little stories.
It's a really good bit. I think it's in the second Batman Predator crossover where I think Mr. Freeze is featured in the story, and it shows the Predator's heat vision, and he can't see Mr. Freeze. Obviously, I always just thought that was a nice touch.
And we get a glimpse of the the Bat armor, which we kind of see in the Snyder Cut and other films, he definitely develops a suit of armor to allow him to fight with the Predator one on one, and it was a pretty cool concept. NECA again actually gave us a figure of that, and it wasn't bad. It was pretty well done. Hit or miss. I liked the Batman Predator one better. I thought that was a better fit. These were interesting as well.
These are
Tarzan.
a surprise to me, yeah, but interesting, yeah.
Tarzan had been, explored with Dark Horse, and the I can't remember what they call it. Pellicular, I believe, is the name of the Earth's core area. So there's like this inner world within the Hollow Earth that Tarzan occasionally visits in some of the original novels, and of course in the comic books. And it's a great place for the Predator to come and test himself. So fun story, well done. Another Walt Simonson story, very well put together. Let's see, what's World Made of Cardboard saying here?
Yeah, he was saying, wasn't there a comic book by Dark Horse that had predators seeding planets with alien eggs in an attempt to make a perfect prey for them to hunt? That's an interesting concept.
It's the very first Aliens versus Predator. It's the very kind of first big story. Very good story.
Yeah. And of course, Judge Dredd pops up again.
Yeah, that cover art's pretty wild. I like that.
Oh, yeah.
Great crossover. That's a great crossover.
So there's some great stories out there. Both of these franchises are good on their own. Combined, they should have been beautiful. Films, fumbled a bit, but yeah. A lot of fun there.
Fun, yeah.
So this has been great. We're well over our normal time for a show, but you can't cover two major franchises and not go into some of the details there. What got you into this particular area of sci-fi in the first place, Bobo? Just circumstantial?
I just thought it was just. I suppose that a lot of it is circumstantial, but there is no real denying it. It's so, especially when it comes to the first two films, and at least the first film of Predator, and they're high quality films. There's deep thinking to be had about both films. They're not just kind of mindless horror monster movies. And I was watching plenty of those type of B monster movies as a kid as well, but there was definitely something that seemed to separate Alien and Predator films from the rest. And at least for me, I know I'm a touch younger than you two guys, so maybe it was more my era's kind of monsters were Aliens and Predators, as opposed to maybe some of the monsters you guys were kind of fond of watching. So I'll always have a special place in my heart for both franchises. Aliens and my wife loves both franchises as well. We'll often just watch Alien and Aliens double bill, or Predator 2 double bill, so I love both. And look, I know I complain as well about sequels and stuff like that, and I think we did a good job tonight of straying away from going into too much of a deep dive of some of those other movies that just weren't that good, but we'll just pretend they never happened.
If those are your thing out there in the ether, if you enjoy those further sequels, more power to you, but they're just not my cup of tea. I think the first two films of both franchises are the best. They just are the best written, the best executed, and how the lore expands from those is definitely more interesting than some of the retreads. And this was true, I found, with Gojitron when we were looking at the Universal monsters as well. Usually the first film and the first sequel are pretty well done. And then anything past a second sequel, it gets watered down. It's just not as good. The ideas are not as fresh. There's only so many ways you can go. So that may be something that is, just indicative of sequels, so somebody smarter than me would have to analyze that. But we do have one other thing I'd like to look at, if I can get my computer to work with me here. Boba sent me a couple of images from his archives of collections And yeah,
Yeah.
so let's
If
let's
you
take
if
a
you
look at
know.
some of these. So these are from the original film. I do see a Colonial Marine there in the background, but when were these produced? Do you remember? Is this fairly recent?
I would say fairly recently, 2016, 2017. I think they finally made their way to producing characters from the first Alien movie. They kind of, I'm pretty sure my first foray into NECA aliens and predators, believe it or not, ironically, was from their AVP line of the bad movies. They were actually the first figures I picked up. The movies were bad, but the figures and the character designs were really nice. So, but yeah, I think the characters from the first film were originally released in 2017, and I think there's been a couple of re-releases since then.
Right.
The shelf that these are on, it's actually behind me here. It's kind of split between Alien and Aliens. I try and
Hmm.
keep most of my human characters in that cabinet, whereas I have a cabinet on the opposite side of the room where I keep the majority of the xenomorphs and yetches.
Okay. So I see we've got Ripley, we've got a couple of other members of the Nostromo. Ash is lurking in the background. I
Yeah,
noticed you had some. There's another shot here of Ash, and is that Dallas in the spacesuit there, or?
that's right. It's Dallas in the spacesuit, looking down upon Kane, who's just had his encounter with the face hugger.
Oh yeah.
I do have a Lambert as well, but she's still in her card. A
Okay.
few of my predators here.
Oh yeah. Not to be outdone. That's a great looking bunch there, and they just look good on a shelf. They're impressive.
They really do. They really do. Though I do often joke that NECA is the reason I originally invested in glass cabinets. I just don't like taking chances. They're just so fragile. They are just so fragile.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, they
and
they
like
are.
I sometimes I take these outside, to do photos and stuff. And I'm telling you, if it's a windy day or you don't want it, you have to be so careful because even the smallest little tap, it's like it's disintegrated.
Yeah. And these are not inexpensive. Some of these were a premium when they first came out. If you buy them on secondary market, they're crazy prices for some of these.
Yeah.
Beautiful sculpts, great paint jobs, but yes, they tend to be a tad brittle. Especially some of their weaponry, the blades can snap easy, so you really got to handle them with some kid gloves sometimes. But do you have a favorite of the Predator models?
I always will probably have the original Jungle Hunter from the first film as my
Mhm.
favorite version. It's just a classic version of the Predator.
Yeah,
A close second favorite would be the elder clan leader from the second film. He's actually kind of front and center in that picture. He's kind
hmm,
of got grey skin and grey dreadlocks, and that figure also came with the pistol that he gives to Danny Glover at the end of the film as
Oh,
well, which I
nice.
thought was a nice
yeah.
little trick. And so, yeah, those two would be my two top favorite Predators. Of course, there's a
Yeah,
few from the comics and the books that they release figures of that I have a fondness for as well. But as far as the movie ones go, it would be those guys.
yeah, the pistol has an interesting history. In the comic books, they did a whole backstory of how the pistol came into the possession of the Predators. And then in the Prey film, apparently they revisit that, but they kind of retroconned it a bit. I haven't seen it, so I don't know exactly. But
Yes, they may have retconned it. Now I could be getting my years mixed up. Maybe it's still possible that it could be canon, but yeah,
mhm.
by on the surface it looks like they've changed the origin story for that pistol. But sure, watch the
Eh,
film and see what you think.
right. The comic story is very good.
It
I,
is
I would
very good,
recommend
very
that.
good.
It and let's see what else. What other goodies you got here? This is another nice picture I like. This is the one in with the red. He was one of the ones from the graphic novels, if I believe correctly.
Yeah,
Right?
that's one of he's the clan leader from Alien versus Predator, and he's sitting on a bone throne, which NECA released. It was actually a really good. I think it might be an original NECA design. I don't think it ever appeared, at least not that I've ever seen in anything that I've read or watched. But it's essentially the back of that throne is an alien queen's brass.
Wow.
And then the arms and the rest of the chair are made up of, human skulls, alien skulls. And the best thing about it is that it's all used from the molds of previously released NECA sculpts. So, like, if you were to put that throne alongside my actual NECA Alien Queen, you could line the two heads up together. It'd be the exact same sculpt. So I thought it was a pretty cool concept, and it looks nice in display when you've got your kind of head honcho predator sitting on his throne.
Right.
There's a poor Jim Hopper lying at his feet there.
Oh yeah. World Made of Cardboard. I guess you came in late. We did talk about Kenner. When you catch the replay, you'll check that out. And we did mention that there is a GI Joe vehicle Easter egg in the line for the Alien Predator toys from Kenner. So watch your replay. You'll catch it.
Chasing Eddie's toys, a bone throne. Now you got Skeletor's attention.
Yeah, he'd
That's
probably
really cool.
look good on.
Yeah, he'd love that. He'd absolutely love it.
He'd probably end up on the throne because the Predators would not take kindly to this.
Well, I can imagine they take the spines and the skulls, and they kind of come back to this clan leader as tribute, and he adds them to his throne. So it's like their trophies. Like they kind of keep building that. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems gruesome until you remember, all of the different deer heads and things you've seen growing up. It's like, okay, yeah, we do the same thing. So definitely, just from your point of view, this one I like. I guess you have the Power Loader, which was something somewhat recently they came out with another edition of Ripley, and Vasquez, and then Burke, the sniveling company man. Is that Hudson or is that Hicks? I can't tell.
So it's kind of obscured by Vasquez, who I'm honoring tonight wearing my red bandana. But
Nice.
yeah, so behind her, I kind of have it set up. Hicks is actually grabbing Burke by the collar, and Hudson is like pointing his rifle in his face. I was trying to recreate that scene where they discover him being a dirty little mole.
Yes.
So I absolutely loved that they even released the Burke figure. Like, that's just tremendous.
Yeah.
It's just
how
it's
is the Power Loader as far as articulation? I mean, it looks beautiful.
It is. It's actually quite articulated, and it's got lots of kind of like rubber hoses and pipes kind of hanging off it that are movable as well. It's a heavy plastic. I'd say you could probably use it for self-defense. It's that heavy. Like, you could knock someone over the head with it, would knock them out. Once again, though, I would imagine if it took a tumble, there's a lot of kind of, like, there's a glass kind of light on top of it. There's a few kind of aerials and things sticking out the side. You'd want to be careful with it.
Right.
Goes without saying when it comes to NECA, just be careful.
Yeah, beautiful sculpt, though. They really captured it. And speaking of captures, if I can get my computer to agree, I love this one. That's a great shot of the Queen. The colors, the lighting, the troopers gone, what do we got here? Yeah.
And just a reminder, folks, I did put a link in the chat to BobaHicks' Instagram page where you can see more of these awesome toy photography.
Yeah, so, let's pop that up.
That's my gas oven, or my old gas oven. I've actually thrown out that oven, but that's where I took that photo.
That works. Yeah, you got metal walls and a rack to use as your base. That's a great shot. I love it. It worked out really well. Now, are those Black Series 6-inch scale troopers, or are those smaller scale?
Yeah, they're Black Series 6-inch scale, and they scale nicely with the 7-inch NECA Xenomorph. So I think you can get away with it. You wouldn't really notice the difference in scale too much.
Right. They should be beefier, so that works.
Yeah.
I like that when an egg opens up, though, everyone's first instinct is, let me put my face right over this. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that never works out well. Another great use of lighting here. A very creepy image. Now, how did you frame this shot? It's inside the oven?
It's another, I think it's the top of that oven. It's like the grill. What happened was when we were getting... our house was getting renovated and we were getting a new kitchen in, so this old oven was just chucked out in the garage where I used to go and take a lot of my photos anyway. And I just noticed one day that the light reflected really well inside it, and it got me thinking. So yeah, like I usually when I'm setting up pictures like this, I just have a couple of portable LED lights, maybe some cardboard backgrounds or something just to place on the ground to actually set the figures up, and then you just kind of work looking for a good angle, looking for a good pose, and
Oh
see
yeah.
what you come up with.
Now your wife seems to be fairly into the same kind of love for sci-fi. So I don't know if you get this, but when I'm doing toy photography, especially if I do any outside shots, I get the eye, you know. The wife is kind of like, really? Really? It's like,
I used
you
to
know,
get
cuz
that. I used to get that. What are you doing? Now she just knows that if she hears the back door open and sees me like, running across the yard with a load of like figures under my arm, she knows
yeah,
exactly what I'm going to do. My neighbors, on the other hand,
right.
like last summer, I was out in my back garden, and that skin predator victim figure I have there.
Uh-huh.
I was tying him to a branch on a tree to try and make it look like he was hanging and have the predator underneath him. And I turned around, and my neighbor was just like walking her dog, looking
Oh,
at
I
me
could just
like,
see that.
"What is
What
that? Like, what is that
what the
tiny
bloody
bloody
hell?
looking thing you're hanging on the tree?" I was like,
Yeah,
So there's been a
I
few awkward
fortunately have
moments
a
with the neighbors.
yeah, I have a nice privacy wall, so I don't have to deal with gawkers. But yeah, I get it. You know, worse, you're setting up. Sometimes it'll take half an hour to get all your pieces set up and get the lighting right to take a shot that takes just a few seconds to take the image. But there's a lot of prep work. I don't do as much toy photography as I like, just because it is very time consuming. But I love this image. I love the way that turned out. As this one, another one, great sky shot, great color,
Oh yeah.
really turned out well. Was this a
And
happy
speaking of
accident, or was this one you set up and
oh,
purposely
that
got
was
the
that was
lighting?
totally set up. One thing I'll say about living where I live, uh, it's always kind of raining and stormy, or at least it feels like it is a good chunk of the year round. So the skies can look very foreboding and unforgiving a lot of the time. And as I'm sure you can probably tell, Largo, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. Well, the red xenomorphs there from the Aliens Genocide comic, and
Right.
Oh.
I was just delighted that NECA decided to do releases of them. Are you familiar with the genocide
Nope.
story?
I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
So essentially, there's so in the Aliens comics, they established that there's a queen mother that lives on the alien homeworld that's essentially responsible for the entire xenomorph race. She's the head of the entire species. So she's eventually killed off in the storyline. Spoiler. And the alien homeworld is left essentially in chaos without a ruler. And there's two different types of aliens, essentially the reds and the blacks. They both spawn queens, and those two queens
Oh.
send their respective armies to war to see which species is going to become the dominant xenomorph species on the planet. So it's a really
Yeah.
interesting look on the kind of nature of the creatures and how
Sure.
they function as a hive society.
And they really
They look
borrow a
good.
lot from ant colonies and
Hmm.
hornets and other types of insects and how they would interact. So well done. And I like the idea of the, different versions of the aliens, fighting for dominance. It's a cool storyline. It's an interesting premise, and it just adds another wrinkle. Just like you have different variants of the predators, they don't all get along either. There's different clans, different factions.
Yeah.
Well, well
World made a
established.
cardboard asking how the Lanyard Predator figures compare to NECA. I know Lanyard are cheaper, but are they more durable? Yeah, I think so. I
Or
don't
more
have
durable.
either one, but I would imagine the Lanyard stuff is much more durable and kid friendly.
Oh
Whereas
yeah, they're
the
The one I
absolutely.
have to hand, it's still in its box, but if you can see, they're not a million miles away in terms of scale. That's their attempt at like the Alien Freestyle Alien. Now, what they lack in detail, they do make up for in sculpt. Like that's a pretty good sculpt for a children's toy, at least in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
There's quite a lot of detail on it,
and for the price
and
too, right? They're a good
yeah,
value.
exactly. They're very affordable, and like in that set, you get the alien, you get a dog, and you get a face hugger, which is pretty cool. For a little set like that, and yeah,
no,
from
no,
any of the Leonard figures that I've opened so far, they're definitely more playable anyway than NECA figures. So you could drop it a couple of times and not worry about it breaking. Put it that way.
And if you
Right.
got some talent, you could probably paint those up and make them look real nice too.
Yeah, I've seen I know Gojitron has a Leonard Predator that's Sal from 2 Cents Toys sent him, and it looks fantastic the way he's customized it. So yeah, if you've got any talent for that type of thing at all, unfortunately I don't. But if anybody does, I would definitely say you should customize those.
Right. The Lenards are basically just molded in color. There's no paint apps. But like you say, the detail is there in the sculpt. If you want to customize, you can come up with something really cool. What scale are those? Are those more 1/18 scale?
They did two different scales.
Oh, okay.
They did
Two
some
different scales,
1/18
yeah.
stuff,
So
and
this
then they did
is
like
the
a
larger
7.
scale. This would be more 5-inch, 6-inch scale, and then they did a 1/18 scale version as well.
Cool. And moving along, we've got another shot of the aliens shelf with the humies and some eggs. It's kind of a wider shot where you see the whole setup you've got there. And then beyond that, just some more detail of the power loader, and another image of that recreation of the scene.
Who's that bishop ripped in half there?
Yeah.
Yes.
God,
Or is that? Yeah, that one's Bishop.
There's a ripped in half Bishop. Yeah.
That is.
I was going to say, I think there's one of Ash here too.
Yeah, there's
there's
Ash's decapitated head there as well.
Yeah. I mean, they really nailed every scene perfectly. I mean, the detail is just phenomenal.
Yeah, the accessories with the NECAs are really good. The detail is good. There was a 2-pack, I think, with Newt and Ripley that came out as well. I think that was like the only way to get Newt.
It was, I think, before that, the only way to get Newt was like they had made a convention exclusive, which nobody was able to get for a reasonable price. And then finally they released that 2-pack. Thankfully, I was able to get one. That's what I use in my main Queen Hive display. I have Ripley just kind of holding on to Newt.
Nice. Yeah, these are great. Thanks for sharing all this with us, Boba.
Anytime.
I really appreciate it. I love looking at other people's collections and their passions for different pieces. One thing I will mention that we haven't touched on is Hiya Toys. In the 1/18 scale, they have done some really good work, both with aliens and with predators. They even did a vehicle from the second film. They did the, I want to call it a troop transport. It had a name, but the big APC. Thank you. The APC. They did a 1/18 scale version of that is phenomenal. They did some of the Colonial Marines, both from the film and from the graphic novels, but really where they shine is in the Predator and Alien models they've done. They've done a lot of the different variations, both from the films and other places.
Actually, I was able to, just on a whim, it was just a suggested thing while I was checking out for something else. On Amazon, they had these clear variants where they're cloaked for like $10 each. They were really inexpensive, and I had picked up a couple of these figures. I picked up like the classic regular alien or our Predator, and I don't have any of the aliens, and a RoboCop figure at Joe Fest actually a couple of years ago. So I thought they'd be cool to add to the. I mean, just about any crossover, you could do with those.
Sure.
So, yeah,
one neat thing with Hiya also, they are in the 4-inch scale. So if you are a lover of the anniversary type GI Joes that came out that were also in that 4-inch, they're compatible. Not perfect, but compatible. But Hiya is now doing some GI Joe stuff as well. They've done Cobra Commander. They've shown a Snake Eyes and a Storm Shadow. So if you want your perfect crossover that should have been of Predator, Alien, and GI Joe, you can make it happen in Hiya Toys. So keep an eye out for that. Wow, we're almost at 2 hours, fellas. Anything else you guys want to talk about in this, or anything you want to plug that you're working on, or?
Nope. I'm just jerk with some toys.
Something in relation. I'm just going to throw out a really quick fun fact. I don't think we mentioned it earlier, but Predator and Commando are both set in the same fictional country. Did you know that?
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah, it's the fictional country of Valverde.
Oh, I did not know that. No.
So the character from Commando may have been a distant cousin of Dutch.
It's quite possible. Who
Interesting.
knows? Who
That
knows?
is interesting. And he could have possibly
Sorry,
been
Will, I
that.
interrupted you there when you were in the
No,
middle of
oh
yeah.
no! It's very interesting. No, I was saying I don't have anything to plug. I'm just a jerk with some toys, and if you see me, you see me. If you don't, you don't. If you like my channel, go check it out. But definitely go check out BobaHicks on Instagram. Link is in the chat. Beautiful photography, and like I said, BobaHicks is someone that we don't get to talk to face as often as we'd like to, but he's always there in the chats, and and chipping in. So.
And our other resident expert chiming in, Gojitron says they have also been doing Judge Dredd and Dredd versus Predator in the high 11,
nice.
Which good stuff. If you're into 1/18 scale, they're doing some excellent work. So, yeah, definitely something to check out. Yeah, BobaHicks is what we call a Grind Fam alumni. I think we first met in some of the Grindhead Gym chats.
I met BobaHicks. Yep,
that's right.
Yeah. We enjoy having some banter, and then we started doing some of the Patreon live streams and got to meet each other on camera, and it's like it was just a natural fit. Got to have you in the lounge, got to hang out, and I would like to do it again.
I love hanging out with you guys. I love it, and often look, as you mentioned earlier, there's the time zone difference. I often on a Friday or Saturday night, I'll go to bed for a couple of hours early just so I can wake up in the middle of the night and get a chance to talk to you guys. So I'm delighted to be able to be hanging out with you today, or any day you'll have me.
Well, we definitely appreciate it, and as we've talked about, we're going to try to kind of keep this format going. We'll do maybe a Tuesday show that's later for North America, our neck of the woods, and then on Thursdays we'll look at doing one earlier in the day for our UK friends. So that's the idea. Depending on
we can't expect you guys to stay up all night all the time. That'd be very selfish of us, So
you can always catch it on the replay, but it's always fun when you can catch one live. So we'll keep that in mind. We've kind of neglected the chat a bit today. Apologies, but we've had fun. This has been great. Really enjoy talking about these two franchises, hanging out with friends, and just enjoying the afternoon or evening, depending on your place in the globe. So everybody have a great one. Just one. Let's see what Eddie's saying here.
He's saying he could hear you gentlemen talk Predator for hours. Sleep is overrated. I'd say that goes for BobaHicks.
Yeah,
I think he has a magical voice. You can just listen to him talk. I said BobaHicks could read me like a shampoo bottle. And I'd be listening to him going, yeah, interesting, very interesting.
Yes.
Spoiler, that's an extreme.
That's it.
Hurt plus.
BobaHicks reads Irish Spring Soap.
Yes.
We Yanks do love the Irish and English accents for some reason. It gives you guys a note of authority in our minds. So it's psychological. I don't know. But the only thing I'm going to plug is Monday, we will be doing The Swarm for those of you who are Action Force fans. So the AF3, Explore the Lore, Valiver Swarm Monday. And later on that week, I'll be doing some recordings with some other friends for future Beasties and Baddies episodes and whatnot. I don't have anybody particularly lined up for Thursday, but next Tuesday, we will be talking with the Epic Badger in the lounge. So look forward to that.
Nice. Yes.
As far as Thursday goes, hey, guys, hit me up if you want to come on the lounge and chat. Who is on the UK type time zone, let me know. Either mention in the comments here or hit me up on email or Instagram, and we'll work something out. So, well over 2 hours. I'm almost out of beer.
All right.
I think we'll call it here. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you were both available today. Thanks to the chat for having patience with us as we fumble through some of this. If you learned something great, if it was stuff you already knew, it's always fun to go back over. Blow the dust off of your old Aliens and Predator DVDs and Blu-rays and revisit and have some fun. So on that note, I will play us out with some funky dance moves. So enjoy.